can I ask you what your thoughts are on the merger, having seen the workings of both departments whilst Minister for Africa?
Thank you so much, Laura, and good evening, everybody. It's lovely to be joining you all in this big tent. And I did have the privilege of being a joint minister. So I was Minister for Africa within the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and then within DFiD, I was responsible for many of the major programme areas, for example, education, anti-corruption. And I must say that from my point of view, I felt that I could not have done the job in any other way, that doing it jointly just made so much sense. And I think it makes the case very strongly when you actually travel within a country and you see how closely the diplomatic team and the DFiD team work on the ground. And I think what we do have to bear in mind throughout this discussion is that we're talking about the very, very poorest in the world. And I think if you're, a baby born in a conflict zone and you rely on UK aid for nutrition, for vaccinations, or if you're a woman who's being trafficked across the Sahel who relies on UK aid to run programs that tackle that, or if indeed you're a girl being educated in any of the very many countries around the world where UK supports education systems, you'll recognise that it's ultimately about what happens with the money and in terms of the focus and the priorities. And within the Foreign Office, with the priorities around human rights, around freedom of religion and belief, around democracy, around the role that we have on the UN Security Council, peacekeeping operations, climate action, you can see that those priorities are very aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. And indeed, it was the UK who had very much a leadership role in terms of working towards the global adoption of those 17 key priority areas. And so for me, I think it's going to be an opportunity to amplify those messages for the UK. And I can't really object, having been a joint minister, to the teams working more closely together. But there are three things that I've asked the Foreign Secretary to commit to. And the first is that he will be a very strong voice for the world's poorest in Cabinet. Having that strong voice in Cabinet for the very poorest is incredibly important, and he has committed to doing that. Secondly, I have asked him if he will commit to continuing to spend at least half of the UK's 0.7% aid budget on the poorest and most conflict affected countries, because I think that's where I've seen it make the most significant impact. And he's also committed to that. And the third thing, which is a passion of mine, is to ensure that we continue to spend on education, the campaign for 12 years of education for every child. I think that's how we really accelerate progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals and a peaceful, healthier, safer world. And then the final point I would make is, as a parliamentarian and now a backbencher, but I do want to see a separate parliamentary committee that continues to scrutinise how we spend overseas development assistance as a country. Thank you, Laura.